Howdy everyone, this is Tricia and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I put together this little patched up little pot holder. Alright, so if you want to see how I put this together, keep on watching and let's get to crafting. Alright, so I'm starting off with a scrap of red fabric and I've cut it. I wanted an 8.5 by 8.5, but I decided to use the amount, the most I had of the fabric. So it turned out to be 8.5 by 11, and that's fine. It can be whatever size, you want to make a little placemat with. All right, and I have a bunch of little scraps here. They're just small little pieces. Some are little strips, some are little triangle bits. And I did cut a lot of these into making them into the little scraps, the smaller scraps that they are. I realized I might need longer pieces, but I do have more of the fabrics where I originally cut from. And I can always cut, extra little pieces out of here if I need a bigger piece to fill in the space that I need. And you'll see what I'm talking about as we get going. I did have these longer ones and I decided not to cut these because I did have others like that from these other pieces, but I cut them. I left these long for the purpose of possibly doing a little edging on the outside, if not to use within, the patchworking here. Patching up of these little fabrics. Okay, so let's get started. Now, from one of the fabrics, I cut out this had a little deer print on it, so I decided to cut out this one little bit to put in the middle. So I'm going to move this fabric out of the way. I am actually going to work on, I didn't tell you, I have this stiff felt fabric. You can use a quilt batting if you want. And I'm going to use this as my base to sew all of my pieces on. Now this could go in any direction. So then we're going to start off with these little scraps after we've decided where we want to put it. And I'll just put it like that for now. And then you want the scrap fabric to, depending on your size of this little bit that you put in the middle, you want the scrap pieces you're going to put on next to encompass the length at one of the edges. So this will encompass that, and I can trim it, which I will. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to encompass that whole length right there. I can just pin it down if I want to keep it in place. You don't have to. If you think you can hold it with your fingers and just take it straight to the sewing machine, you can. Okay, so then you're just going to make sure these are edge to edge and their right sides are facing each other. And you're going to sew and just make a small little seam, 1/4 inch or less if you can. So let me go ahead and sew this first little piece. All right, so let's go ahead and sew that. Okay. And pull that out. And I just go ahead and trim off the little threads as I go along. Okay, now that I have that sewn on there, I'm going to pull it up and then I'm going to iron it down. And if I have to, I'll pin it so that it doesn't move. All right, so now I want to take another strip of fabric and I want to grab something that's not that same fabric or this one. I want to do something different. And if you have a piece of fabric, a little strip of fabric like this, for example, but it's not long enough, and if you have another one just like it, let's say this one was another short little piece, what you can do is you put them together and sew them so that you can make the long strip that you need for that. To cover that edge length, okay? But I do happen to have one, so I'm going to go ahead and use this one. And neither one of these is perfectly straight, but I'm just going to put them where when I sew it, I know that I'm capturing both fabrics. Pin it if you need to. Go ahead and sew it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and trim. And I should have trimmed it from one side only, but I didn't. So we'll just do this. It's okay. Okay, so go ahead and sew that, fold it back and iron it like we did this one, and then just pin it down so it doesn't move, and we'll move on to the next step. All right, so for my next step, and I'm trying to avoid not using any of the fabrics that are right next to each other, so let's see what I can use. I have this one. This one's long enough to encompass the length of all of these little fabrics. So then I'll go ahead and put that on here. So turn it over and iron. Okay, so you can see here that I've already added another fabric, and the one that was here that was like a triangle, I went ahead and I cut it straight right here. You don't have to do that, but I went ahead and cut it straight. And now I'm going to take another piece, and I want to put this one, let's see, I want it to go right here so that when I sew it, it goes like that. Okay, but just before I sew that, now I need to figure out what I'm going to put right here, because I want to make sure that what I put here encompasses, you know, the length of this. Now, let's get a nice long one. Let's grab this one. Now, if I was to use this one here, it has to capture this right here. So I'd have to line it up right about right here. And this is not long enough to meet up over here. It's not long enough to meet up there. So I would add another scrap to make this long enough to fit here. And then I just looked at it right now, and I don't want to use this one because it's going to attach to this one, and I don't want them to be the same, attached to the same area. So let's grab this one. And I need to push it all the way to make sure that that's going to capture that. And then another piece. So I'll have to sew these two together. Alright, now that they're sewn together, I'll just iron it open. Okay, so now I'll be able to add this piece here, so it'll do that. Okay, and you'll see that this will get kind of cut off a little bit. This white one will turn into like a little triangle, and I kind of like that idea, so I'm going to continue with this. And I'm going to put this one here first before I add this one, so let's do that. And just making sure that, you know, everything's going to get caught. All my fabrics are going to get caught. Okay, so I've ironed that open, and then I grabbed this piece and matched it up right along the edge right of this one right here where it goes in right here, making sure it encompasses both fabrics. And then I trimmed it to the length of that all the way over here. So I just cut off a piece, and I can now sew that. Alright, so this is what I have so far, and I'm going to continue on off of camera. I just wanted to show you how you can put in a little triangular piece in there. And then this one that I cut to be more of a strip, it started off as a triangle. Now it has this, you know, interesting shape to it. And that's cool. I want to have that because that gives it more intrigue. Like, well, how is this put together? But if you don't want that, then just cut, you know, strips and just keep adding them all the way around till you're finished with your project. Or you can cut them as you go, so that you'll cut them right to the sides, and you don't have to be, you know, putting little pieces together like I am doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and continue because I want to encompass this little edge here, and then I want to do this little corner up here. So let me go ahead and show you that, and then I'll finish the rest of it. Alright, so I've added this red strip, which I sewed together to encompass this whole edge that was here. Sewed it on, ironed it down, and I did trim a little bit of the green here. I didn't have to, like I said, you don't have to do that. But I did it for whatever reason. Anyway, I've ironed it down, and this covers this all the way to the edge except for right here. I still have some felt there that's visible, so I'm going to take another piece of fabric. And I want to make sure that it does go from the edge that I want to start sewing to the edge where I want to finish, so that when I flip it over, it does cover that felt edge, and it does. If it didn't, I would just add another piece, no big deal. But for now, that'll take care of that little corner, and that'll make that a finished piece there on that corner. And then I can continue on with the rest of it. Now let's go ahead and do that. Tiny little corner there of felt. I'm not going to worry about it because we're going to sew that. It'll get sewn in. And all the fabric that's like, you know, going over the edge of the felt, we'll trim that off at the end. We'll turn it around like that so we can see what's, and you know, put it flat on the table. We'll see what's coming out of the edges, and then we'll sew it. All right, so I've managed to cover anywhere that any white felt was showing, and I have an interesting little bits of scrap fabrics on here, and it's sort of creating a little frame around this one little square in the middle that has a little reindeer design on it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll turn it around so I can see. But first I'm going to make sure that I pin down all of my fabrics. Make sure that they're, you know, down in the areas that I need to be touching the felt. Let's get some more pins here. Okay, so now I can turn it around. And now I'm going to go ahead and trim any fabric beyond this felt edge all the way around. I feel like my rotary cutter would be better, so if I take this to my mat, use my rotary cutter, I can do a better cut. Also because I won't be lifting this up like that, I'll just have it flat and cut. That way the fabric stays nice and flat. So that's the best way to do it. But yeah, I'll do that and I'll be back with it. And then we're going to sew around the edges to make sure that all the fabrics are adhering to this. And if you want to sew around the edges, you know that I have it pinned, I can go ahead and do that and then trim it. Okay? So it's up to you how you do it. So that's what I'm going to do. Sew and trim. And I'm just going to get as close to the edge as possible. So now that I've sewn all of this around the edge, I can go ahead and trim it with my scissors because now it's not going to move around on me. Okay, so this is done, trimmed around, and this is what I have. It's a cute little block. And if I was to do this like on a piece of muslin or something, you know, thin fabric, I could actually just make a whole bunch of like blocks for a blanket. Just maybe make them square. So use the 8.5 by 8.5 measurement. And that way you have a 1/4 inch on each side for, you know, to sew things together for seam allowance. And you'd make a nice little cute little throw or blanket or whatever you wanted instead of using the stiff felt. And I know you use quilt batting, but some quilt battings are, you know, very delicate. They get caught into these little teeth down here that, you know, that feed your fabric through. So that's... I think it'd be better to sew it onto, like sew all your little, if you're going to make blocks for a blanket or quilt, whatever you want to call it, to put it on like a thin, another cotton fabric or a little thin gauzy fabric or what did I say before that? I don't even remember. Gauze or muslin or something like that. All right, so there's my little square, my little block, whatever you want to call it. It's actually a rectangle. And just use it for whatever. But since I put it on my stiffy felt, I am using it for a pot holder. I could use that heat resistant fabric that you can put between things so that it's a better pot holder or a better, you know, to put a hot pot on top of it, or maybe just for decoration. Or maybe I have a frame that has a broken glass and I'm going to get rid of the glass and just put this in a frame. That would look really pretty as a framed picture. But that's it, you guys. So now what I'm going to do is I know that I've already sewn the edges, but at least that secures these little pieces of fabric and they won't move around. So now I want to sew again, but I'm going to add this fabric on here, and again as close to the edge as I can. Sew that down. I do want to put this as a trim, and this would be better cut against the grain of the fabric at an angle rather than, you know, cutting it straight on the grain. But that's what I had, so I'm going to try using this for my trim. So I think I'll put this like that, and what I'll do is I'll just cut it to the side so that I can then turn this around once it's sewn, fold this edge over, and then just put it like that. And then sew it down on this side. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all these little ends together so that I can just make it a continuous piece and sew all the way around. And I'll do these bigger pieces like that. Okay. Alright, so what I've done here is I've taken these pieces and I've sewn them together, but I've also, I've ironed them in half. I've trimmed them, and so that they could all just be the same width. Some of them were a little bit wider than another scrap. So I've now folded it in half, and then I've ironed it so that it stays marked like that, half folded. It'd be easier for me to fold it back around the edge of the of this little block. Okay. Start off somewhere in the middle, and start sewing as close to the edge, but making sure that I am grabbing this red fabric and of course the bottom block that I've created. So I'll go ahead and pin it for now, because I just thought of something that I want to do. I want to have like a little loop where I can then like hang this from. Okay, so let's take more of this same fabric. I want to fold it in half. Oh wait, you know what? Yeah, no, I'll go ahead and just do that. I'm going to iron it like that, but then I want to fold this to this edge towards the center, and then the other edge the same. Fold it towards the center and iron. It's so hot. My fingers are burning. And then fold it in half, so you create this little piece of, I don't need it to be that long. Okay, so now I'm going to sew this so it stays, oh my god, it's so hot. I'm going to sew this down so it stays in that position, and then we'll loop it for that little loop that I want out here. So let me do that. Okay, so now that I have that little piece, I can loop it, and I'll put it under here somewhere in the middle. Let's go ahead and remove this. I want to put this somewhere in the middle. Let me make sure this is the top. Yeah, there's a reindeer. This is the top. So I want to pin that. I was going to sew this red fabric down, and I decided, oh, I'm just going to capture it all together. Okay. Pinning that to the center. I will get to that point where I do pin it. I'm just trying to keep these straight on top of each other here. These ends here. There we go. There. It's going to be thick there. Okay, so then when I start putting this, I want to make sure that it overlaps it. So let's just pin it for now at the start, and then over here. Oh, another thing I want to do now that I'm here, I don't want to start sewing this end. I want to fold it in. Okay, because we don't want that little raw edge overlapping, to the side. So we want that to be folded. So we're just folding that little edge down, and then we can start sewing. We'll come around the corner, and so go all the way around till we get to this other end, and then I'll trim it a little bit longer, and then we can go ahead and finish sewing it, and then we'll be able to turn it around and sew it from the other side. When I pass my fabric over the that little loop that I created, I want to go back and forth. I want to make sure that I catch it. The other thing is that I do want the little ends of the loop to kind of pop out where I can see them, so I just pushed it further, upward on this edge. So over them, like that. Okay. And then just kind of mark where you want to stop that seam so that you don't go all the way to the end over here. And put your needle down. I'm going to remove pins, so now I can turn this around. Alright, so I'll continue all the way till I get to that point where I started, and then I'll show you how I finish that off. Okay, so I'm coming almost to the end here, where I'm going to meet up where I started the other, the other end where I started. Let's put this, and we're going to go beyond that point where I started. Just go about an inch or so. over that little loop there. Okay, so now we can go ahead and this end here, we can go ahead and trim that off. There we go. Oh yeah, that's gonna get under. That's gonna end up underneath this other fabric. So you have that little fold here, but you're not gonna see this raw edge because it's gonna be inside of this fabric here when we fold it over. Okay, so now we want to go ahead and get those little corners. I'm gonna have to trim them actually. Let me trim a little bit on these little corners. They're gonna become a little bit rounded off, and that's good. That's fine. Okay, let's tuck them in there. All right. Okay, so at this point, what you would want to do is you would want to make sure you iron all this forward, make sure, you know, because I did iron that fold, but you want to make sure that it's still turning nicely. Yeah, okay, so now, like I said, I'm going to iron that. So my lights are going everywhere. Okay, so I want to iron that. Let's move this down. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to iron this down. And I'm going to fold this edge in and bring it over. And I'm going to pin it. Okay, and I'm going to continue all the way around, folding in that little raw edge first towards the center of the strip, and then over the edge so it overlaps the top of this side. So right now, this is the only pinning that I'm doing right now. So just like that. Same over here. Okay, so now that you've got the 4 points done, you can go ahead and continue with the rest of it. And you're just going to pin, because you're going to want to get a nice little corner, and it's the little corners are always the toughest. At least they are for me. So sometimes you have to kind of have it pinch and overlap itself, and that's fine. Oops, I think I didn't fold it down enough here. Okay, a little tiny pinch and then fold over that little bit of fabric. I'll bring it up so you can see what I'm talking about. See that little corner? Just overlap it like that. When you fold in the fabric, push these both like that. Push one under the other, and then just like that. And then you can just go around like that. Just continue. Or it might end up the other way, because like I'm sewing this way. I'll start sewing like that. And I'll catch that little corner there. So I'll just be folding it. You can iron it, make it all nice, which is what I should do. Or just start going at it, okay? Edge over here. I want to sew as close to this little folded edge on here, right here. So right on that little edge. All right, so now I'll just continue all the way around, and I'll keep folding in. Okay, so I'm coming to the part where I have my loop, and I want to make sure that my loop is not down that way. So I'm going to bring it up this way now. I don't want to get caught underneath, because then, you know, it'd be harder to bring it up and, you know, to hang it. Back stitch and done. All right, everyone, so I have finished my little pot holder, and I really like the way it looks. It's not the best sewn project because it's the first time that I tried doing this type of binding with a little fabric that's not cut on the bias of the grain of the fabric. Also, I noticed a few little things that I wasn't really paying attention to. And that's when I first sewed this edge onto and I sewed it on the other side. Of course, you can see my stitching on this side right here. Look at that. Look what I did. Because I didn't bring it out further and far, I pulled this way over when I sewed it down. So then you can see the stitching from this side on the back. And you want to bring it out as much as you can. You'll have a little edge out here. So that when you sew, you're actually sewing on top of the other, itself, the same green fabric. So that's one mistake that I made. But, I mean, I'm just going to hang it up in my kitchen. It's going to look really cute. I mean, I'm happy with it regardless. So that's it, you guys. I'm still going to go ahead and give myself a big old thumbs up. And I hope that you too will give me a big old thumbs up. And leave a kind comment down below. Let me know what you think. You know you can do a better job than me. I know you can, and you can learn from my little mistakes. So there we go. If you don't want to do the this little binding, what you can do, this red fabric, instead of putting it on here, put it facing, the right sides together with the front of your a square here, and then just sew around so that you leave a little opening, right? And then flip it over inside out, and then just sew that little opening. Maybe leave the opening at the top so that before you sew the opening closed, you make your little loop, insert it in there, fold it in, fold in your edges of your opening, and then insert the little loop in there so that when you sew that, you'll sew this on there. And you can sew all the way around. That way you have a nice, finished edge on the whole thing, and don't worry about putting a little trim. Oh, that's my only suggestion, but I still think this looks really cute. Just like that, because I'm not going to hang it like that, you guys. I'm going to hang it like this, so nobody cares what it looks like. I'm done talking. I want to thank everyone for watching and subscribe, so hit that red button, and also notifications, choose all, so that you get notified as soon as I upload a video. Thank you again for supporting my channel, and make sure to like and leave a comment, and as always, enjoy.